Rumble. Right. Welcome back, everyone. That was the longest outage of internet I've had here, and the longest outage I've had in like 5-6 years, maybe. It was unexpected. Anyway, we're back. It does look like it was the ISP, but we're back now. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. But if you're on YouTube, you will need to watch on the new stream event, because the way I'm streaming to YouTube, it just kills the stream event if it drops connection at all. But we should be back on the same event on Rumble, I think. And either way, still here in Discord. While I was gone, it appears the discussion has turned to Nachos becoming a VTuber, as well as, of course, plenty more pictures from Wolf of cabbie dominating elves with enormous breasts. There's that. Anyway, shall we get back to what we were covering? Yes, not only is my internet going down will take down some services that are present in Cabal. Let me actually test for now if it has come back up yet. Looks like it hasn't. Yeah, some of the systems that I run rely on a connection here. I think Parry should eventually repair itself, but I'm just going to restart all of these bots just to be sure. Some of these won't need restarting, but I'll restart them anyway. All right, a lot of the bots that were that had stopped working should start working again now. Let's see if TrustNet is up. No, I'm actually going to have to restart quite a few of these, actually. That's a shame. Right. I think I should... interesting. I should reconfigure these to handle disconnection like that better. Not that easy to test, though. Anyway, bots should all be coming back up now. So give it a few moments, and they should be ready. Well, Nachos, you could always just be your normal extreme self. Tales from the dope shop. Yeah, maybe. Right. So where was I? Right. That's all working again now. Apologies for that. I do have plans in the near future to set up a more reliable server for hosting all this stuff on. So I will do that soon. Anyway, let's continue. I'm going to do a quick ping to people who got disconnected from Discord to come back. Connection issues fixed. Stream is continuing now. Right, that'll do. Okay, let's continue then. So, memes. Where did I cut out, by the way, chat? I think we did cover this story, didn't we? I think it was in the middle of saying something, but I can't remember what I was saying now. So let's just keep going with the next thing. This is apparently Irish Amelia.
I'm in the grand city of Dublin, and I've something to say. Me great-great-granddaddy fucking fought to free Ireland from British rule in 1921. Then in January...
This is a lot less well-made than the other one, isn't it? I don't know what... Years says this looks like AI. Years, do you think it might be AI? Do you think it might just be AI?
1973, we had a referendum and joined the EEC. Years later, the EEC morphed into a fucking dictatorship called the EU. And ever since then, Ireland has gone to fucking shit thanks to the EU. I'm Amelia Fagan, and I'll be posting more about the fucking Egypts in Brussels soon.
That was badly made, especially compared to some of the really, really good Amelia ones. No one's said this cheapens the whole message. It kind of does. I mean, which part of it? Like the fact that it's just badly made AI? They could do this much, much better. Slop, yeah. Some of the Amelia ones weren't slop. Honestly, they were AI, but they weren't slop. This was slop. Next up. UK judge rules that RuneScape Gold is fair game when suing for theft, at least in the case where an ex-developer stole $700,000 worth of it. RuneScape Gold is a more stable currency than some national currencies. Just so you know. Including Venezuela, by the way. Easy to deliver the thieving skill quest, they say. And there's a picture of a RuneScape character. Remarkable that I think the most played and popular version of RuneScape is still the same one I played as a kid. A quote from the fucking South Park World of Warcraft episode here. You can't kill that which has no life, but you can apparently steal that which has no value, they say. The UK judge recently ruled that stealing gold pieces in old school RuneScape counts for the purposes of at least one judgment that was made on Jan 4th as spotted by Games Radar. The case involves an ex-employee of RuneScape dev Jagex who's been accused of hacking 68 player accounts, seizing hundreds of billions of gold pieces, which he then sold outside the game for Bitcoin. Jagex argued the gold was worth over $700,000. Well, that's at least at very least hacking, but considering it to be actual property, that's interesting. I'm not sure if that's right, but it's close enough. Let's have a look at these other videos because I think I haven't seen this one. That was kind of slop. This one, though, I don't think I've seen this one, but it looks like it's in the same series as the really good ones. See what this is like.
England brought civilization to the world, and the world still needs a civilized England. But the English people are being overrun with migrant third world layabouts and militant Muslims. Englishmen, I've no use for your stiff upper lip as you endure your replacement and the ruin of your country. What I need from you instead is to stiffen your spine, stand up, and stop it from happening.
Yeah, fair enough. Not quite as good as the other ones, but that's pretty good. We've already got a cosplayer. Much like the Persians burning the picture of their leader. Former leader. Not sure what he counts as now. This one. Okay, just a lot of AI stuff. There was some really good ones. That one's not quite as good. Yeah, anyway, continuing, where was I? Past that. This guy says, I've had it, fuck ice, I just ate shit on my patio, so over winter. And this guy responds with, you're a fucking idiot, dude, the dude literally reached for his gun. Yes, both sides are getting confused by the acronym ICE, and so there is an argument to change the acronym, but I don't think it matters really. I think this is funnier, to be honest. ICE can be dangerous, but it's also a force of nature that some will argue is necessary. Next thing, after all, why not? Why shouldn't I say it? This is the kind of thing that you would not be able to make sense of really in any other time. It's a mix of several memes. The Burger King nigger sayer, the Amelia, and then also the Bilbo quote from Lord of the Rings. A fine combination, though. Martha is still going with the highly sexualized edits of Cabby. Yes, Pug, the Amelia anime intro is very good. It's very good indeed. All right, next thing. How is Ice doing in Minnesota? Pretty good. Very good. I did steal this briefly for the thumbnail of today's show. Another very real picture of the incident in Minnesota here. Trump is directly shooting Pretty. Most of the footage doesn't actually show this, but that's because the footage has been doctored. In this case, it's actually real. This is real. This is what actually happened. Trump was there. He shot the man in the back of the head. Yeah, no, just we'll get to that. Don't worry. Yes, never forget this photo. Never forget the day a squad of headless zombie super soldiers executed a man in the street for absolutely no reason. Now, why has this been posted, you may wonder? And by the way, yes, this is also real. Why has this been posted? Well, that's because this is not the first time that something like this has happened. It's a parody of what was apparently being thrown around as if true by people that misunderstood something. This picture was making the rounds. Some people seem to believe it was true, at least that's the claim. What is shown here is on the right that appears to be a very headless man with some very incongruent limbs. However, while this image is AI, it's not actually baseless. It is in fact a still from the incident that they have, that's very low res. They've put through AI to try and enhance it, and the AI has just mistakenly rendered it wrong such that the guy doesn't have a head and some things are in the wrong place. However, a lot of this is actually how it looked. And we'll get to the footage a little later, but despite the fact that this image it's obviously not true, it is fairly representative of what happened. We'll get to that a little later. Yeah. And this is the footage it's from, but we're going to get to the footage properly after the meme section. We've got a few more of these to go through first. Yeah, Sean Bean pretends not to remember the line. He says, I went like this, I think. And then wasn't it something about Mordor? It was over 20 years ago. You know, one does not simply remember lines from that long ago. He's still got it, lads. And not all of the Lord of the Rings actors ended up remaining admirable people, but maybe Sean Bean did. Sean Astin was the most disappointing. His character was quite distinct from his actual personality. Yeah, this was a point, I think this was posted by Corinne. We live in a world where trained cops can panic and act on impulse, but untrained citizens must remain calm with a gun in their face. That's not the standard. And I don't think anyone's advocating that. What's being said is, if an officer does the wrong thing, you are safest and wisest in every way to do the right thing, in almost every case. That doesn't mean they should do the wrong thing, but you have to have some sort of law enforcement, and they're not always going to do the thing right. That said, I have heard a lot of people talking in the US about how American officers get very little or very poor training compared even to other Western countries, and that may be true. It seems like it may also be true with ICE, perhaps even more true with ICE. But that's what happens when you rapidly expand something that's this close to the ground. It's necessary to do the work they're doing. Maybe not exactly in the way they're doing it, but then I'm not saying I could do any better. Yeah, exactly, Bug. This is not the standard. It's just wise to do this in this situation. It's not right that trained officers should be able to panic and untrained citizens must remain calm. It's just that is the most sensible thing to do if an officer is acting wrongly. But it's not right. Next up. Imagine going to a protest to try and get laid, but getting mortally ventilated because you try and pull a gun on federal agents, this guy says, and then being posthumously face-tuned by women who wouldn't give you the time of day while you were alive. Here is the comparison of the edit. They have made him look, among other things, whiter, which is interesting, isn't it? We'll get to the claims of what he was doing on the day a little later, very soon actually, but I don't think it was this clear-cut. Next up, if Trump was out of Minneapolis, it'll be the second time a US president has betrayed US troops engaged in combat against Somalians to save his poll numbers. I don't actually know of the other incident, but I thought I'd mention this just for balance. I don't think that's what's happening. What it looks like actually is that he's pushing even harder. He's replacing the current leadership with stronger leadership. That's what it looks like. We also have a coverage of Tim Walz and Trump have had a conversation where it seems that they were amicable, which might mean that Tim Walz is ready to give up, but I'm not sure yet. Avalon says, Corinne demands action from law enforcement, but the moment there is even a slightly grey situation with law enforcement's use of force, he goes mad like some leftists, essentially demanding capitulation the moment the left creates the least amount of pushback. I could see that. Obviously, the preferred situation is that the work is pursued professionally and without any problems happening. However, you can't always rely on that. And maybe ICE agents are not as well trained or as well disciplined as they should be, but given how quickly the agency has expanded and given how much they've already done to apprehend illegal immigrants, the work needs to be done. So I don't think most of us would choose a different path in practice. Interesting. They deploy the discombobulator on anti-ice rioters, it says. It's interesting. Yeah, they are on edge, nachos. That is certainly a factor. Okay, so actually, perfect timing. This may arguably refer to the position that Corinne tends to take on law enforcement. I completely disagree with Corinne, but this sort of speaks to that. This ICE situation is really complex. My take is more nuanced. I want our immigration laws to be enforced, but I just want them to do it without using any force, and without anyone ever getting hurt, and without anything sad or upsetting happening ever. And if the people we're trying to deport don't want to be deported, or if liberal activists don't want us to deport them, then obviously in that case we shouldn't do it. But I'm totally against, unless people get really mad at me, then never mind, please don't yell, I'm sorry. Yes, it does seem like some people take this attitude, doesn't it? The whole situation that we're in the world is fucking extreme. It's not as extreme as it could be. Like, Ivan, things will get worse, or could get worse. Don't assume that we're at the bottom yet. They're not as bad as they could get by any means. But it's pretty extreme given the context of the last 100 years, at least since World War II. Things are pretty out of hand. And so we can't expect to be able to solve them with absolutely no violence. Now, the violence being done is not even malicious or directed or punitive. It's chaotic as a result of self-defensive actions directly, or of a self-defensive attitude in a situation where there's chaotic violence being done upon people enforcing these laws. So it's given how bad the situation is, something unpleasant was bound to happen. So yeah, and it's right, it needs to. It's something like that needs to happen. It's the direct corollary. It's what we've been kicking the can down the road, avoiding all this time. It's solving these problems, but because of that, they get bigger. So we have to do something about them. And sometimes that gets tough for people. What's wrong with internet now? A couple of you are mentioning it. It dropped a few minutes ago, but it should be okay now. Avalon says, in 2024, ICE has wrongfully arrested something like under 200 US citizens out of 600,000 arrests totally. Yeah, we talked about that a few streams ago, I think. Out of all law enforcement agencies, ICE has the least incidents of injuries or deaths caused. Yeah. But they're higher profile because they're happening closer together. Discord, okay. Yeah, exactly. Something has to be done. And the way Trump is going about it, I don't have any, like, specifically with ICE and immigration enforcement, I don't have any, like, recommendations for significant improvements that wouldn't significantly slow the thing down. Okay. So, yeah, pretty much no notes on it. Had no problems with this when Obama did it. I didn't give a fuck about the performative whinging, It's odd that it's just happening in Minneapolis. Like, there was some resistance and some discontent over ICE's activity in other states, but not very much, nowhere near this level. Why is it specifically Minneapolis that it's so extreme? Is it that somehow through back channels, they've been trying to, maybe the Somalis or maybe other groups with influence have been trying to make sure that there is more fighting, there is more conflict and more chaos? Someone says, under the Obama administration, there were 57 deaths involving ICE and not a fucking peep. Yeah, because the press didn't go for it, I guess. All right, next thing. Yeah, it's just a reminder, the Epstein files are still a thing. Like, Trump was ordered to release them by Congress and still hasn't. Just bearing that in mind. If I say anything good about Trump, which I do because he does some good stuff, there's quite a lot of good stuff actually. There is still some big fucking black holes, and the Epstein file is the most obvious one. There are others too. Just let's not forget about it. Next up, yeah. So High Guard released. I don't know much about it, but apparently it sucks. Same with Marathon and Concord. I think I would look into it today and just revel in how bad it apparently is. But I think I will move on for now so we can get to the main story and cover that in greater detail. So let's continue with the memes for now. American Patriots down with Amelia. This says, I suspect Americans in chat would agree with this. But in reality, the truth is that the patriots of America and the US have more in common with each other than they do with their non-patriotic countrymen, as is often the case. I don't think so, Sick Puppy. I think that's going a bit too far. But there have been some disappointments for sure. I got a synonym for Overwatch. Well, Overwatch was good when it released. All right, next up. This is some more like human supremacy stuff. And I like sci-fi human supremacy, and I also like a sort of Paleolithic or evolutionary human supremacy. When you're a fast animal and slow, hairless apes try to run you down and kill you with primitive short-range weapons. Ha, they never get tired. Uh-oh. And then suddenly they team up with the wolves. Basically, in the evolutionary arm race, we just discovered all the best strategies. We had the meta down, and still do. I mean, in evolutionary terms, very little time has passed since this era. We are still winning on the same ground. It's just that we have gradually reached behavioral and technological improvements that exponentiate the rate of the power accumulation that we have. The reason that humans seem so distinctly different from the animal kingdom is just speed. We just got to exponentiating speed increasing factors of development or advancement, however you want to call it, which allow us to then get to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. Before anyone else has even advanced past biological evolution, you're suddenly in the information age because we just hit so many advancing factors. Theoretically, two species could have done this at the same time on the same planet, and you could have two competing, completely different species, which are both civilized. But it would be extremely unlikely just given the time involved, the span of time involved. Oh no, not Marvel Rivals. Yes, Scarab, that's accurate. Not right now, I see. Okay. When humans were persistence hunting with sticks, there was some real competition. We discovered how to throw rocks at high speed and the arms race ended. With a sling, you can throw rocks at really high speed. Sick Puppy, bear in mind that when historically Jews have been kicked out of a country and then suddenly a golden age happens, that may have been because the Jews were being so evil and subversive, and that may be a factor as well. But it may also be because, in many cases, at least this is what I've heard, the Jews were kicked out so that the crown wouldn't have to repay the debts. And then they just had more money to use after they kicked them out. So they spent it, hence a golden age. I don't know, I think that maybe both are factors. Usury is often evil, but it is much like weaponry. Weaponry is an evil, but it's necessary sometimes. And when it comes to competing with other powerful entities, weaponry is necessary. Usury, regrettably, in a world where other people are using it, it's a tool which is dangerous to misuse, but powerful when used well. And I'm not saying I like it, but I think it's necessary for a powerful species to make use of tools that are empowering. They have to be careful not to misuse them, though, which is the rub. Sometimes the potential for misuse is too great, such that you shouldn't bother using it at all. But if someone masters it, they will have an advantage. Unfortunately, that probably will. Usually probably isn't going away. Interesting, Capstasher. A legal observer can pull out your entrails, can they? You can kill a lion with 10 men throwing rocks at it, and then we invented spear thrower. Do you know what it was? Yes, the atlatl, or whatever it's called. I thought the atlatl came before the sling, actually. Doesn't make sense, because they say they had all their shit seized when they were expelled, so when they get the money to repeat the cycle. Don't know, Somnus. I don't know the story with that. Yeah, there was some coin clipping involved. They still do it, apparently. Indeed, 8-bit. There is a correlation there. Is that why you've adopted that appearance as well? Yeah, Toast, I've seen someone trying to be accurate with the sling, and they did eventually start getting the hang of it, but it looks difficult. All right, next thing. Ah, yes. Freerun Series 3 has started, and they actually did the Freerun like chin pose thing that became a meme. They actually depicted it in the show. So I liked Freerun Series 1, and I intend to watch Freerun Series 2. However, I may wait for the whole thing to release first and then watch it all. I know that Di, for example, will want to watch the series, and it's probably going to wait herself for the whole thing to come out. I may try and watch it with her, but we'll watch it in Cabal either way. I expect it'll be good. I've been talking a bit about I wanted to see if One Punch Man Series 3 is any good, and I saw a review, like a review comparison of Series 1, 2, 3. 1, excellent. 2, okay. 3, pretty poor reviews across the board, like a distinct difference, which is a shame, because I was hoping that it would be a return to form after I thought Series 2 wasn't that great, but Series 3 apparently is even worse. Anyway, I might watch One Punch Man at some point, but One Frame Man, yeah, I did hear about the animation sucking. That doesn't bother me very much, but if the story sucks, then that would bother me. Sick Baby says Uzlu defends usury because he doesn't see how greed is a sin. Few things wrong with that. One, I'm not defending usury. I'm defending the necessity of using it for power. I don't think it's a good thing. Two, greed is sometimes good. It is the force that makes capitalism work. And when tempered, it is very useful. And a sin, I see how it is defined as a sin. Yes, you're wrong about that. But I don't personally believe in sin as far as the religious definition, because I don't believe that there is a God. So a sin is not relevant. It's useful as a word that essentially means an immoral act, but I don't believe that that sin is a real distinct thing, separate from just immorality. So I believe you're wrong about almost everything you said there. So, puppy. Yes says greed is bad. Desiring to gain more resources through your efforts is not. You can have healthy or free-ish market societies with greed still being minimized. It depends how you define greed in that case. If you're defining it like that, where greed is specifically an excess, then yes, but that's because you're defining it as an excess. We can say excessive greed is bad. Yes, excessive almost anything is bad. But greed, when it's not excessive, isn't bad because it's not excessive. Again, like you can define it however you want, but that's sort of circular. Greed, using the most broad definition, is not always bad. It is sometimes good. You could use the term avarice to be extreme greed, but again, if you're defining it as distinct from moderate greed, then you're defining you're putting your conclusion in your premise, which is that it's excessive. Yes, greed can go too far, as most things can. But take all of the 7 deadly sins, all of them, a small amount of each, a moderate amount of each, is not just not bad, but sometimes good, healthy, and necessary. A small amount of pride is not wanting to kill yourself. A small amount of greed is actually fighting for your own interests, which matters. Pick another one. A small amount of sloth is taking a break occasionally. Like these things are necessary. You've got to go somewhere in the middle. It's where you get excessive in either direction that it's a problem. It's not enough to just say any example of these things are bad. Zero lust to know more people. Well, a reasonable amount of lust is loving your spouse. Marcus Lowe, murder is not one of the 7 deadly sins. I didn't say the commandments. I said the 7 deadly sins. A small amount of wrath is standing up for yourself. Like, it's the problem is excess, as with most things. But then that's self-definitional. I don't think so, yes. If you're defining greed as specifically excessive, then it's the excess that's the problem. Yes, exactly, no one. They are specifically excessive, which means that if you define greed as excessive greed, then it's bad, but that's because it's excessive. Excessive means bad. So that's the problem. Well, Scarab, sometimes a large amount is the correct amount. Sometimes a large amount is the moderate, accurate amount to use. But it can, even if a large amount of wrath is needed, it can theoretically still be excessive. The globalists are trying to take over and they're importing millions of people into our countries. It's very bad and we should do something about it. Yes, the amount of wrath needed is, well, we discuss it often. Deport and react strongly defensively and maybe even execute some people for treason. Some other things perhaps as well. But reacting by nuking the entire planet would be a little far. So wrath, even when a lot is needed, can go too far. You can not have a necessary amount of greed because it is defined by excess. I'm not sure if it is. If we want to define greed as being inherently excessive, then sure, the definition that you gave works, but not because it's greed, but because it's excessive. Greed is merely the flavor of excess. Necessary amount of greed would be want, not greed. I think that difference of definition, which is quite subjective and ambiguous, and I don't think you can say for sure that's what it means. You don't use wrath, you use justice as the reason to remove migrants. I've seen comments from Usequipy that seem to defy that. Becomes greed when excessive. See, that's not a terrible definition. I don't think it's the common definition. But it's, you could use that. Let's actually have a look. Greed definition. According to the definition that Google spits out, the Oxford one, it does say intense and selfish desire, which sounds like it is excessive. So yeah, maybe that is fair. In which case, if we're using that definition, you could take what I said to essentially mean that the moderate amount of what in excess is called greed is good. Yeah, I think the point I'm making that it's the excess that makes it a problem, not the specific flavor of thing, is still accurate though. A moderate form of any of the 7 deadly sins is still not a problem and quite normal. Yeah, you can define it that way. You can define it either way, but either way makes sense. All right, let's go to the next thing. The EU is launching W, a social media platform designed to directly compete with X. Every account will require human verification, so there will be no bots on the platform. A few problems with this. Firstly, coattails a bit. It's already called X. You just picked the previous letter in the alphabet? No, hold on. UVWX. Yes, the previous letter in the alphabet. You could have chosen any name at all, but you chose specifically the previous letter in the alphabet. Also, by the way, by far the longest letter to pronounce. X is 1 syllable. Most letters are 1 syllable. W is 3 syllables. It is rare, and it's because it literally comes from it being a W. Much like the number 7 is 2 syllables, whereas all other digits are 1 syllable. W is an odd one. So that's already a weird, probably bad choice. The idea that they will require human verification, so there'll be no bots on the platform. There are bots on X, even though Musk requires it. So I wouldn't say there will be no bots on the platform. You can say that they aim to reduce bots, but don't say there will be none. That's ridiculous. That'll never happen. Blue Sky clone. Yeah, why make another one when Blue Sky exists for the left? Yeah. What they mean is they want to digital ID verified social media. Yeah, pretty much. They're going to build what they wanted X to do for them, essentially, what they wanted it to contort into to remain on their platforms. Short the stock now, maybe, yeah. That's just retarded, indeed. All right, next thing. Yeah, I had this open before the the AC6 stream. Plato, a mech is just a tank that can trip. Diogenes, behold, a mech, a tank upside down. Yeah, the idea that a mech is just a tank that can trip It does make some sense. The Armored Core does show it being quite different, but then it's not that realistic, I don't think. They probably intend to ban X to force EU citizens to use their supranational app instead. Yes, I expect they do. And I will keep using it. Because because you cannot, in fact, ban that unless you also ban all VPNs and all similar technologies, which they're going to have a lot more trouble doing. But Oozlu, that would be illegal. Probably not, actually. Probably not. It's unlikely they'll make it illegal for me to access it. They'll simply make it illegal for Grok to operate, or for X to operate in the EU. They would struggle a lot more to make it illegal for Europeans to access it, though some countries may try and do that. That would not be their first means of attempting it. Next up. I opened it. I can't remember why I opened it. I think Wolf made this, but no one knows why, and it's very disgusting. And let's move on. Yeah, I think this is another one that I may have shown on stream, but I can't remember if I did. Let's have a look.
Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm English, and I love England. I like having fish and chips and a pint at the local pub. I like Shakespeare.
Yes, we did see this. I will link it for anyone that hasn't seen it, but I'm not going to play the rest of it. I think we watched this on stream recently. You're not meant to be in the EU. Yes, we're not in the EU, indeed. Think about this. Yes, it's an EU platform. Britain is still, under Labour especially, fairly closely aligned with the EU, especially these days. But no, we wouldn't be forced to use it. But if most of Europe started blocking X, Labour in Britain would already have done so, most likely, or would join them in doing so. So I'm assuming that they would be aligned in this. Under a different leadership, most likely not. Use a much more working class accent. I hate that fake AI British. I don't mind that accent. In the fucking source material, she's an art hoe. Her being working class is not really necessary. The voice is grating. The literal audio quality of the voice is like weirdly off, is weirdly painfully rendered. But simply the accent or the voice in general, I don't think is wrong. I think it's appropriate for the character. Okay, good. Right, that's it for the memes. Well, we had a lot to catch up on meme-wise today. There's a lot of culture that I've missed having not streamed for a while. But let us now move on to news. Let's analyze the shooting, shall we? So what I have for you here is a good place to start. This video here is an analysis from New York Times or Wall Street Journal, I think. Yeah, New York Times. Not a source you'd expect to give a good analysis. However, it does. Now, I have loads more footage and we'll go through it all. And I'm not... I think you may not like my conclusion, chat. My conclusion is not based solely on this footage, but this footage does give a lot of good... it gives all the angles and perspectives that you need to see it. There's a bit more information it doesn't cover, and there's some ambiguous stuff that it doesn't talk about or that it gets wrong. But this is a pretty good analysis overall. Eat the Continentaloids already. Yes. Didn't the government claim there were body counts? They did. We have that story as well, but they haven't released it yet as far as I know. Okay, so I'm going to cover this next. I'm going to do a segment recording for it that I will later upload, and I'll try to remember to do so. I was busy before with the other ones and didn't get a chance to. So I'll record that in a sec. I'm going to be right back real quickly, just grab a drink, and then I'll do a recording. We'll have a dedicated, focused politics session where we just go through all of this and we try and come to a conclusion. So I shall be right back. I am not oozapooing. I am merely getting a drink. Don't go anywhere, chat. Right after this, we will do an in-depth look of the pretty shooting. Just for you, Nomon. Right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it, shall we? The video will be about Alex Pretty, obviously, and the shooting. I need to think of exactly what to say right at the beginning. Yes. It's been a pretty disastrous time. A pretty serious event has occurred, something like that. Rip Bozo, exactly. And then we'll get straight into it. We've been through a lot of the memes already. We could start with one of those, but I think I'll make this actual serious analysis video rather than a meme compilation. Yes, Somnus. I have looked into it a bit. I looked into the footage. I have an opinion. And the possibility of it being a SIG misfire is definitely present. However, that would not significantly change my opinion of the situation. Let's go into it though. And my opinion may change, especially with input from chat as we go through. Right. So things are getting pretty serious in Minneapolis. Here is a video analysis from the New York Times on what happened with this shooting. Now I have lots of other footage and lots of other details that we'll go into, but this was a good analysis, I think, to start with.
When federal agents shot and killed 37-year-old Alex Pretty in Minneapolis on Saturday, officials said he approached agents with a handgun intending to massacre them.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
But a Times analysis of video footage from the scene and the moments when two officers opened fire clearly contradict federal government statements. Pretty does not appear to pose a threat to agents. In fact, at several critical junctures, he is outnumbered and under their control. Here are the key moments that reveal what happened. We see Pretty walking about, filming a group
and his nose
of protesters who are speaking with a federal agent. He's holding a cell phone in one hand. The other hand is empty. It's just over 30 seconds before the shooting when a protester is pushed to the ground.
So that scene starts with the ICE officer here on the right pushing over a woman I think, onto the pavement. Now, we don't know why he pushed her over.
It's just over 30 seconds before the shooting when a protester is pushed to the ground.
Not very clear. She seemed to do something, but hold up her hand in front of his face or something. He might have overreacted there, pushing her over. I'm not particularly bothered about it, but a large part of the analysis here is going to be premised on the notion that this whole city is a powder keg. Everyone's at each other's throats on both sides, and the left has been setting up organized patrols to harass and obstruct ICE, who are just trying to arrest dangerous illegal immigrants who are a danger to the very people who are resisting it. I'm not sure why he pushed her over. It may have been unjustified, but it's also, again, in that context. So maybe understandable from a human level, even if not justified professionally.
Pretty steps between her and the agent who'd shoved her, briefly putting his hand on the agent's waist. The agent...
So he may have been trying to push the ICE agent, may have been trying to intervene more strongly, but it didn't seem like he was trying to actually start shit. He was just trying to stand between, like block him from being able to hit her further. The kind of thing you might intuitively do if you can see one person being violent to another. You might just try and put your hand in the way to stop them from moving. The ICE agent reacts swiftly with pepper spray, which again may have been an overreaction, but given how much of a powder keg this situation is, and given someone getting up close to you like that, you know, half a second later could have a knife in your throat or your chest or something, or on your side. You don't know that, so you want to get them as far away from you as possible. I'm not saying it's professionally justified, but I understand why they would be reacting this way.
Pepper sprays Pretty's face. We can see Pretty is still holding his phone in one hand.
Ravelon in chat saying blocking him with physical touching him is a felony with up to 8 years in prison. Maybe so, but it's also a pretty standard instinct, I think. So maybe so, but I'm not sure that would justify what happens next.
While holding his other hand up to protect himself against the spray. Contrary to statements by federal officials, he's made no threatening movements towards agents.
What happens next is very odd. So, okay, he's being sprayed by pepper spray. He's probably very dazed and blinded. More than one agent is now pulling at him.
Pretty, who had a fire,
and now it's so strange. I don't understand. This is the part of it I just don't understand. The rest of it, I understand at least somewhat, although some of it's ambiguous or I disagree with some narratives on it. This part I don't understand. Pretty has now grabbed the woman who was on the floor, the very woman who he supposedly was standing in the way to try and protect. He has grabbed her and is wrenching her around. It's not exactly clear how he's holding her. I think by the shoulders or by the clothes, but it may be by the hair. Why? The only thing I can think of is that he's blinded and thought it was an ICE agent, or that he was dazed and just didn't know what he was doing. He was just trying to grab at something. But it's odd.
Arms permit, carries a gun.
But it kind of looks like he's fighting her, which I think is why the ICE agent subdued him so much stronger than they already were. They pepper sprayed him already, but if nothing had happened from that point, if Pretty had just like walked back in a daze, stunned, and not grabbed someone, he might still be alive. Why he grabbed her, I don't know, but that might be the thing that eventually led to his death. Though, of course, other things happened in between as well.
On his right hip, but he doesn't reach for it, and it appears agents are unaware the gun is even there.
Yeah, you can see there that this analysis doesn't really focus on it very much, but you can see here,
reach for it.
He's stumbling. He grabs onto her back.
Here's agents,
and at this point, he's not making any hostile moves towards her.
Are unaware the gun.
Then suddenly he reaches down and grabs her, seemingly in the lower body.
There. He reaches toward the protester.
And I think maybe he tripped. It looks like he did trip over her, but then he's pulling her up like violently.
Apparently trying to help her.
I think it is by the hair actually, but it's at least by something near the top of the body, perhaps the clothes, but it may have been the hair. At this point, the ICE agents are just trying to defend the woman. The woman, by the way, who one of them just pushed to the curb. It's not been a good day for her. In the space of 5 seconds, she's been attacked by an ICE officer. Again, maybe it was just, I don't know, maybe it wasn't justified, maybe it was. Pushed over by an ICE officer, and then suddenly wrenched around by the very protester who was ostensibly trying to stand between the ICE officer and her. Very strange situation, that. But the aggression, the apparent aggression Pretty was showing towards her is probably why the ICE agents decided to subdue him so forcefully.
Her up, while agents begin grabbing him.
He still held on to her even when he was on, one knee on the ground, but several agents managed to get him off her.
From behind.
And then one of the ICE agents actually steps in and tries to reassure the woman. Well, I think he missed the fact that she had got up in the ICE officer's face and done something which caused him to push her away. I don't think she's a big fan of ICE, but the other ICE agents here are jumping in and trying to reassure her.
Tries to pull away.
In other footage, which we'll look at later if we get to it, you can actually hear him saying, "It's fine," or "You're going to be fine, it's okay," something like that, reassuring her.
And again, he makes no threatening movements towards the agents.
At this point, he probably can't make any threatening movements towards the agents. Firstly, he's too busy making threatening movements towards a civilian. Again, I don't know why. And secondly, I think he's too stunned and blinded by the pepper spray to do it intently.
But agents pull him backwards and force him to the ground. Then, shots ring out.
First shots occur. Now we're going to look at exactly what happens here. There's a lot to discuss. Many of you have opinions and inputs. But let's go through it gradually.
Now we'll slow things down so each moment is clear. Here is Pretty. Several agents are restraining him, and this is the Border Patrol agent who will shoot him first. This appears to be when agents first notice that Pretty is carrying a firearm and yell that he has a gun.
So they're yelling he's got a gun. There's an agent here that you can see with his hand on Pretty's lower back, and he's found a holstered gun, which Pretty should not have brought, really. It was not wise. He legally allowed, but it wasn't wise.
Watching the same moment from a different angle, the agent who first pepper sprayed Pretty beats him several times with the spray canister.
Which isn't very professional, I don't think. Probably not even very necessary either. Probably excessive, but whatever. I don't think Pretty had actually done anything to warrant this subdual in the first place, perhaps. I mean, just standing and lightly blocking the officer when he pushed a woman to the curb, I don't know if that should be considered a felony. I think that's a bit far, but whatever, he's down. Grabbing the woman was the worst thing he did, but again, I don't know if he really knew what he was doing.
We can see that both of Pretty's arms are pinned down by his head.
I don't think that's that clear here. We'd have to trust the analysis, but I don't see his arms doing anything during any of the footage that we have from the point he was on the ground.
This agent in gray reaches to remove Pretty's weapon from his hip. As this agent unholsters his gun, nudges the agent in gray out of the way, and fires.
Is that really what happened? So there's some dispute here, because the gun that Pretty had was apparently a 6-hour P320, is that correct? And SIG has been famous recently for having guns that fire just when they kind of feel like it. I have some footage somewhere that I'll find in a minute of someone demonstrating this problem. I wonder, was that first shot actually fired by the agent they've selected here? It's the only part of this analysis I think might be wrong. There is some footage that we'll get into in a minute of the gun potentially firing after it's been taken away from Pretty. We'll get to that in a sec. But what I find interesting is that when the first shot is heard, Pretty actually moves up. Everyone lets go of him because they assume he's got a gun, which is not the case, as far as we can see.
Out of the way, and fires.
Was that the sound of Pretty's gun having been removed from him, misfiring? Because what happens now is Pretty starts getting up. Then he's shot and falls down. So I'm not sure about that. I think either theory works, that it was a misfire and they overreacted, or that they just shot without realizing the gun had already been removed from him.
Let's rewind and focus on the agent who shoots first. Just seconds before he fired, he was facing away from Preddy and focusing on an entirely different situation as he tries to spray a nearby woman with an irritant. The spray appears to malfunction, and the agent turns as he adjusts it. That's when someone yells that Preddy has a gun. And around 5 seconds after fully turning his attention toward Preddy, the agent draws his weapon and shoots. His arm visibly recoils at the first shot.
I'm not clear exactly that that's what happened there, but this is the argument against it being a misfire. Who was it that fired first? If it was this guy that fired first, then, well, either way, I think it's not brilliantly justifiable. And we'll get to that a little later, but does his arm appear to recoil?
And shoots. His arm visibly recoils at the first shot.
I'm not sure if it is. It could just be a normal movement of the arm, but it could be a recoil. If it is him shooting there, when the gun has already been taken away and didn't misfire, it is harder to justify this shot.
The firearm has clearly been removed from the scrum when the first shots are fired toward Preddy at close range. The officer who disarmed Preddy can be seen reacting to the sound of the first shot, looking.
Again, that might not have been him reacting to the sound of the shot. It might have just been him looking around. Hell, the gun might have gone off in his hand, and in the immediate first moment when that happened, he didn't realize it was his gun that had fired, the gun that he just took from Pretty that had fired. Anything could explain him looking around. It doesn't have to have been that the ICE officer who had the gun pointed at him was the one that fired. It might have been a malfunction of the confiscated gun.
Back toward the skirmish.
But I admit the narrative I'd lean towards is the one they're proposing here, though I'm certainly open to the misfire narrative. Not a recoil, it's a continuation of his movement. Watch again. It certainly could have been, yes. But it's not exactly clear.
The shooter was standing behind Preddy and not under direct threat, contradicting statements from Homeland Security officials that he fired defensive shots.
Look how slippery the ground is there. You can see that whatever that thing is on the floor there, that little object, bottom middle, like a torch or something, watch it slide.
Under direct threat, contradicting statements from Homeland Security officials that he fired defensive.
Just keeps going. It's very slippery. Like, that's a factor here in the panic and in the increased danger. Yes, Nachos, exactly. I would like some body cam footage of this as well. Apparently there is body cam footage, but I don't think it's been released yet. So I may do another feature on this when it has been.
He also has a vantage point to see the gun pulled from the scene, but it's unclear if he did and whether he thought a weapon was still on Preddy. He then fires 3 more shots from behind Preddy, whose arms are down as he appears to brace himself against the pavement. In one hand, he still holds his phone, and in his other, his glasses. The agent in gray who removed Preddy's gun carries it across the street. Preddy is disarmed and falling to the ground. But the agent who first pepper sprayed Preddy and later beat him with a canister also pulls out his gun. From a distance, despite the fact that Preddy is lying motionless on the ground, these 2 agents fire 6 more shots.
And that's where it gets really hard to defend. Preddy was motionless on the ground, not moving or resisting anymore. Now, I understand prudence and wanting to be sure. If you think someone's trying to kill you as a police officer, you make sure they don't get to. But if you have already succeeded in that, you don't empty your mag into them. I don't know. That seems to be excessive. It seems to be like these guys were really high tension, panicking, overreacting, which means, again, from a human-to-human perspective, I can kind of get why this happened. But professionally speaking, it wasn't justified. So it seems.
Neither is under threat.
What the fuck did you just do?
In total, the agents fire 10 shots in 5 seconds. After the shooting, an agent kneeling next to Preddy's body asks where the gun is.
I got the gun. I got the gun.
I don't think they actually knew that the gun had been removed. So best I can do in defending this is just it was completely unknowable. There was no malice here. There was no intent to murder. I don't think from either side. But I don't think this was a justified shot. It was chaotic. But and with the Nicole Good situation, if everyone had like, you know, infinite time between each like moment to think through the situation and to really plan things out and to understand, maybe they could have resolved the situation without shooting her. But that's kind of debatable. She was in a deadly weapon, and it did seem like she was trying to hit the guy. He shouldn't have been at the front of the car, but then if they hadn't shot her, she would have barreled off towards whoever else was in the way and possibly hurt someone else. So that's harder to say, and that probably was justified. In this one, I don't really have a good answer to justify it. I don't think it was. It was chaotic. I get why they overreacted, but I don't think it was justified. Now, you know, maybe even holding him down, subduing him, but I think beyond that, it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't malicious. It was barely even negligent. It was just a horrible incident, a horrible mistake.
Showing that not all of the officers seemed to know the weapon had been removed. Agents appeared to begin giving medical aid.
Which I think after dumping their mags into him is probably not gonna help.
About 31 seconds elapsed from the time agents first physically engaged Preddy to the moment the last shot was fired.
Yeah, and you got there the adult center in the background with pictures of Somalis. So just filling out the montage there. So yes, I'm afraid to say, chat, despite the fact that with Nicole Good, I was able to say it's not a great case, but it is justified. In this case, I don't think it was. Again, I don't blame them for this mistake necessarily. It's a very difficult situation in a broader, very difficult situation. Human to human, I get it, but technically, professionally speaking, it was not justified in my opinion. 1, he has a gun. 2, there is a gunshot. 3, all officers step back and unload into the threat. It takes them about a second to start shooting and 3 seconds to stop shooting. They had no time to assess if the threat was gone after the first 3 shots, but before they started shooting themselves. It depends where the gunshot came from with that one. If the gunshot was the SIG misfiring, then it becomes a little easier to justify the mistake of them thinking it was the guy. However, a lot of them, including the guy who had the gun pointed first, had a vantage point to see the gun being taken. I don't know how he missed it. But if it was that, then fair enough. But if it wasn't the SIG misfiring, then how do you justify that? If the ICE agent shot first with no warning, he has a gun. I'm not sure if that's enough to justify a death sentence when there's no verification, there's no, someone can just say it, especially if he's already got the gun. Now, I think that's a pretty extreme standard. A gun's not even illegal to have. You can have a gun without intending to use it. You'd have to have a very generous standard to law enforcement, which is going to result in a lot of unjustified killings, to say that if an officer claims that someone has a gun, then you kill him. When he's subdued, his hands are down, he doesn't seem to be moving, and his gun has just been taken from his back. And even if that were to happen, it's still a mistake because he didn't actually have a gun, not to hand. It's, again, a somewhat understandable mistake, but still a mistake. And so there is no on paper justification for it. And certainly what they were saying about him going there with murderous intent doesn't appear to be true. There's no evidence of it either. No, I'm not saying that you had to wait for them to start shooting at you first, but it's too easy. It's too easy a standard for the police to just say he has a gun. You're allowed to have one. And that's just in a mob like that. To be fair, the mob was entirely ICE at that point. Everyone else was nowhere near them. Do you think they would be aware of whatever guy involved is doing? No, I don't think so. But considering that there were 7 on 1, it's hard to make that assumption. He reached for something and a gunshot went off. There's a possible case for self-defense. Again, I'm not saying they should be prosecuted because they may have known no better. And in the chaotic situation, it's an understandable mistake to make. But it's not I don't think it's justified to have killed him. There was no actual justification there. It was just a misunderstanding, I think, that you can excuse on a personal level. There was no malice, but it was a horrible misunderstanding. I don't think he was trying to hurt them. Maybe you could argue that if he could have got his hands free and could have got to the gun, that he would have shot them, maybe, but there was no indication that he was trying to do that. What do you think I'm missing, Years? I'll continue with the coverage for now, but I may bring you on in a few minutes. So yeah, that's that part. Let's have a look at some more of the stuff that I have. So this is the footage, I believe, that shows the potential misfire of the SIG, which if it was a misfire, then this would help to justify the reaction. So it is not that easy to tell, but there is one frame here which appears to show the slide retracting, which is what happens when it fires. It's really not clear, but that might be a picture of the SIG firing, misfiring against how it's meant to work. Let me see if I can find the, is it this one? No, I will find it. Hold on. Not that one. Not that one. I do have somewhere negligent discharge. I don't think it's going to come up for that. I do have somewhere the footage of the of how easy it is for this gun to misfire. Yeah, I'll try and find it in a moment. For now, let's look at let's get more of the footage that we have. I'll just go through in order the footage that we have. That's the same one. So there is apparently his phone took footage of the entire incident. So it may be that there's more footage there that can be used. It will be much closer, and of course the ICE most likely have the phone, but we haven't seen that footage released. Oh yeah, here it is. I don't know why that was hard to find. This video, I've heard about the SIG guns misfiring, but I haven't looked into it personally. But watching this video just before the stream, holy shit, this is really bad. I can't believe this product is actually on the market.
Put some input into the slide somewhere. Will it go off again? Will it release? Let's see.
I don't think guns are meant to do that. Yeah, maybe guns just do that in the US. Is that how they're designed to work in the US? Just squeeze them gently and they go off? If you've thought an unfriendly thought at some point in the last 10 years, the gun just mag dumps into your family. Is that how it's meant to work is that how they usually work in the US? Or is that an unconventional, is that an oddity? Would that be slightly less than the design intention? Yeah, as Pug says, the video is 6 months old. It's not reacting to the death. I'll skip ahead a bit because he fiddles around with the gun and does some other stuff, and then he does a demonstration of the problem. He's very careful not to point it at himself, which I think is a wise precaution.
Again, we are roughly, as we saw on the tabletop, I'm guessing we're roughly 1 millimeter to less than 1 millimeter of engagement on that trigger. And let's see if we can get it to go off again.
That's insane. How did this get to market? That's insanely dangerous. That's crazy. They shouldn't just lose a bit of market share from this. Someone should buy their guns for a fucking decade until they can prove they've fixed this problem. It's never going to happen again. That's insane that can happen. I don't know the details of this, chat. Is this happening while the safety is on or off? Because I believe what they've done is the trigger is depressed a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. And they just squeeze the the slide and it blows. Either way, it's ridiculous. And this is, I'm not sure if it's the exact same gun, but it is definitely a similar gun or the same make, or either way, could have been the gun that is apparently firing here. People have been, I've vague interest in guns, but many people in my community have more of an interest. And I've been idly seeing people talking about the SIG misfires for a while. But this could be the first instance where one is causing like a major political event, where this misfire had caused the whole thing to go into life or death. This frame does look like the slide is retracted, meaning it's fired. So that genuinely could be it. And that would help to justify the shoot. Because if someone says he's got a gun, then you hear a gunshot right next to you, there is a better justification there for taking the shot. I think if it wasn't a misfire, it's harder to justify. Either way, it's a horrible mistake. As I said, with Good, she was probably trying to hit the officer, and she did hit him, but she was probably trying to hit him more directly, more straight, and actually run him over. In this case, I don't think Pretty was trying to. It was a horrible mistake. Again, human to human, understandable mistake, but Pretty was not trying to hurt the officers. They mistakenly thought he was. Let's keep looking through the footage I have, though. That footage was weirdly manipulated, and I think we already got good footage of it. Okay, here's some proof. There you go. Proof that the gun misfired. That's how gunshots look. Yes, this is AI. Yeah, that may be what actually happened. Well, that's not how it looked. The tragedy is to Pretty put the officers into this situation. Again, he didn't actually do that much. With Good, she was deliberately blocking officers. She was driving a deadly weapon, and she probably tried to hit the officer. She put herself in that situation. All Pretty did was, he was clearly antagonistic, but not physically, beyond just putting his hand up to stop the officer from pushing the woman more, which maybe is an infraction, but a very minor one. That's all he seemed to do. And like pulling at the woman as well, which I don't know why he was doing that, but he might have been dazed by the pepper spray. That's all he seemed to do. It's less justifiable to say that he deliberately put himself in that situation. Now, would he have been happy to fight ICE? Yes, because he did about a week prior. But he hadn't been that day, or not that we saw, not at that moment. So there's a bit more footage here. Yeah, this is from just before it all kicked off. So I'm curious, what did she do? I don't think she really did anything. She just stood there. And then he pushed her. I'm not sure she did anything to deserve being pushed like that. I'm not sure how justified he is in pushing her when she hasn't done anything. She just stood in a place where she was in the way. He pushed her. And then Pretty gets up, and it's not clear here, but it doesn't like he punched the guy. He just put his hand up. He may not even have touched him, actually. I don't know if he did. He may have done that. It looked like he was just trying to block the ICE agent from being able to push her more. Next thing. Another angle. Yeah, so this is the one where the woman who was just pushed and then was wrenched around by Pretty, the ICE agent then comes over and says, "You're fine, it'll be fine." It's not that easy to hear, but he is apparently saying, "You're fine," after they try to help her, seemingly. She was crowding their car and refused to go to the sidewalk when ordered multiple times. Fair enough. I didn't see that in any of the footage. If that's the case, it is more understandable that she was pushed. Yeah, I think this is again about the SIG. Backlash for this, but the agents who shot Pretty should probably be fired, it says. That is his gun in the agent's hand. He was disarmed before they shot him. Unless they can release body cam footage showing he reached for one of their guns, this isn't a good look. He says, I still support ICE overall, and Pretty would still be alive if he had not actively inserted himself into federal operation. He was inserting himself, but in a pretty minor way compared to Good and some of the others that we've seen. Not enough to be deserving of death. Yeah. Israel says, intentionally dressed like a militia movie character, intentionally armed himself, intentionally went to a federal operation, intentionally interfered with it, intentionally resisted arrest. Some of those I don't think are true. I don't think he dressed in a militia, like a militia character. Actually, maybe he did. What? Let's have a look at the footage again, actually. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. Let's have a look where he's falling down. What was he wearing? I don't think so. I don't think he's wearing any like tactical style gear. Intentionally armed himself. Yes, as is every American's right. Intentionally went to a federal operation. Yes, protest is every American's right. Of course, was he just protesting? Not necessarily, but he didn't seem to do much beyond just protesting. Intentionally interfered with it. Technically, yes, but in a very minimal way. Intentionally resisted arrest. Not actually sure about that. He blocked the officer who was pepper spraying him, but once they tried to subdue him, he didn't seem to resist it. And maybe he was. It's hard to tell with everyone crowding around. But the resistance that there was, if there was any, it wasn't very effective. It did seem quite minor. Glow the Dark says, traitors get the bullet. He was intentionally harming followers, helping foreigners to harm the USA. Arguably, it's a political position, though. It's a currently contentious one. You can say that his beliefs are traitorous, but traitor is reserved for specific actions with someone who has access, or someone who aids a foreign power. I'm not sure that's exactly what this was. It's too subjective to say that he's a traitor. Technically, subjectively, informally, casually, certainly you could say that, but I'm not sure that what he did was deserving of a death sentence. If it was, then a massacre of the entire town, of all the people out protesting, even just protesting, would be justified, and some people would like that. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's wise either. Was he deserving of arrest? Was it reasonable to officers who were trying to arrest him? Didn't see him being disarmed, heard he has a gun, and heard a gunshot to perceive him as a deadly threat? Possibly, but was it reasonable to get to that point? As it goes through the series of events, each thing that happens becomes slightly more justified, but it starts off, I can't understand the justification for a lot of it. As I said as well, even if it's okay, let's define the terms a bit. Justifiable in this case, because there might be some ambiguity here. I'm not saying that the officers broke the law or did something with murderous intent. I'm not saying that they wanted to kill him deliberately, or that they did something that's way outside of protocol. What I'm saying is that there was actually no need to shoot him. They wouldn't necessarily have known that, but that means that it was a mistake overall, even if their actions on a tiny scale were not wrong. It was a mistake. With Nicole Good, it was much less so a mistake. It's easier to justify. With this, the only justification that you can really make is that there was a series of actions taken which were not correct, but which were not overall correct. Ultimately, they were not accurate to the situation, but they couldn't really have known that. It was a panicked, low information, chaotic situation full of little mistakes that added up to someone being killed who didn't really need to be killed. Even if the individual officers didn't do anything directly wrong, the whole situation was wrong. This guy did not need to be killed. Nicole Good arguably did, given what she was doing, given the potential attempted murder and the fact that she was driving a deadly weapon. This guy probably didn't, especially once the gun was already taken. If the SIG misfired, it's much easier to justify the officer's reaction. If it didn't, it's much harder to justify it. Was deserving of arrest. At what point? Potentially he was just from blocking the guy. But I'm not sure if that is enough to warrant even arrest, let alone shooting him. And they only went to actually arrest him when he grabbed the woman as well. And that was probably a misunderstanding. Again, I'm not sure why he did that. I think he was dazed. Didn't do it intentionally. So at that point, arrest, sure. But I don't even think he was resisting arrest. There was no indication he was. It was a horrible misunderstanding that they thought he was armed, that they thought he'd reached for a gun, that they thought he was trying to shoot them. Horrible misunderstanding. I don't think we're disagreeing, Raven. If we are, it might have been a matter of definition of terms. Hopefully my clarification should have helped that. Not desirable, but deporting millions requires force enough to do so, especially if millions more protect them. If someone is genuinely getting in the way of enforcing the law, then yeah, you use the force required to stop them. In this case, the force wasn't required. It was a mistake to think it was required. An understandable mistake, a mistake they shouldn't necessarily be prosecuted for. They shouldn't be, put down for murder or anything. But it was still a mistake. It was still, from the outside looking in, not justified. From the position they were in, I can understand why they perceive it as justified in the moment. But it wasn't, in fact, overall, I don't think. Let's see what you guys are saying. At no point of getting in the way, a Border Patrol agent who was trying to enforce his order to the woman. Oh, at the point, I see. He had just enforced it. Like, if Pretty just, like, standing and just doing that between the two after he'd already pushed the woman, if that's worthy of arrest, I think that's maybe a bit excessive, and you'd have to arrest a lot of them. But maybe, I mean, getting up close like that is a potential risk, as I said earlier. But then, as I said, yeah, if that justifies arrest, then he wasn't resisting arrest, and it was a horrible misunderstanding. I don't think we're actually disagreeing, Revelon. Britwood says, if a slight tap can set it off, are we surprised a change in elevation wouldn't? No, if the SIG as showed the gun as showed in that video, if it was that gun, it makes it much more likely that was an accidental discharge, yes. Considering the organizers wanted a P320 for rioters so this would happen, he was stalking them for a week with a gun that is a felony, and he was in a signal chat. He was not bystandered. Okay. A bit of a confusing message there, but I hadn't seen evidence that the organizers wanted P320, the gun that has the misfires, but I could believe it. And it would benefit them. He was wrestling with the agents that were piling on him, trying to cuff him. I didn't see that happening. The footage isn't very clear on that. Let's see if we can get a perspective of it, actually.
Shooter was standing behind Pretty and not under direct threat, contradicting statements from Homeland Security officials that he fired defensive shots.
It's really hard to tell if he is. It's really hard to tell if he's resisting arrest. I mean, but bear in mind at this point, he's blinded, probably panicking himself. So it's really hard to tell if he's resisting arrest. That's what he was doing. He was obstructing law enforcement. It doesn't make me happy. That's what he was doing. If he was, it was barely. And again, yes, technically he was obstructing law enforcement when he stood in front of him. Barely. And if that's justifying of arrest, technically, sure. But then what happened beyond that caused him to be shot was a tragic misunderstanding. He didn't actually do anything violent towards the officers, as far as I can see. Now, let me clarify again, because there seems to still be some misunderstanding here. The shooting him was not necessary to survive. In fact, in the moment, it may have looked like it was because of a horrible misunderstanding, that they thought he had a gun and was trying to fire it. But in fact, it wasn't. In fact, he didn't have a gun. He wasn't trying to fire it. Maybe he was wrestling with the officers, but that's not very clear. the reason he was shot was, it seems, a tragic misunderstanding. Either because the gun went off when he wasn't holding it, or because they thought he had a gun when he didn't. Well, had one, but it had been taken off him. They thought he had a gun ready to use, which he didn't. Now, maybe footage comes out that shows that he reached for one of the officer's guns from one of that would change the picture completely. But at the moment, I'm not saying the officers didn't have a reason individually to react, but it was as a result of a tragic misunderstanding of the situation. That's what it seems like, Nachos. What's different from what I said from reality? He was a communist agitator who had attacked them previously, and he had a pistol in hand. No, he didn't. He had a pistol holstered on his back that was then taken away, and a second or two later, he was shot. He reaches for his holster as soon as the cops get off him. Maybe, but there's nothing there. Now, that may indicate intent, NTS, and from that point, you can say, he's dangerous, now shoot him straight away. But before that, he hadn't. Now, if he had intended it while he was on the ground, maybe. We can't demonstrate that. I mean, at that point, depending on which theory you go with, he had already been shot. Reaching for your holster then, when you're blinded and panicking, you can forgive anyone for doing that. Most people probably would. If someone had shot you for no good reason after blinding you for what you would perceive as a very minor infraction, you might well reach for your gun if you had one. Yes, he was generally speaking a violent agitator, but so far in the footage that we've seen, he wasn't being one. So it's harder to justify it, therefore. He interfered with an arrest. He wasn't an arrest. It was a shove. Resisted his own. I don't see any evidence that he resisted arrest and reached for his firearm. He reached it. I haven't seen that clearly that he reached for his firearm. Maybe he did after he'd been shot. Let's see if we can get to that point, actually. So it would be about here.
Fires 3 more shots from behind Preddy.
He does reach behind him, but obviously doesn't get anything because there's no gun there. So yeah, he does reach behind him. So at that point, it's much easier to justify if he still had his gun, and it may indicate that he had an intent to use it. But as I said, pretty much anyone would under those circumstances. Most people wouldn't buy P320 or stalk ICE. Yeah, if you look, having this perspective on ICE, not like violently resisting them or trying to hurt them or whatever, but just believing as you do about ICE is not a death sentence. It's incorrect, but that's not enough on its own, obviously. Thankfully, he was already disarmed, but he didn't know that he had the intent to shoot the officers. He certainly did afterwards, yes. But at that point, we don't know, he may have already been shot. It depends. If that first shot was the SIG misfiring, then he hadn't been shot when he reached for his gun. If it wasn't the SIG misfiring, then he had already been shot. You don't put your gun on a cop if you don't want to get shot. You know what Carl Rittenhouse did and put your hands up off the firearm. Yeah. But again, I could understand someone in a situation where they're blinded and have already been shot reaching for their gun. Like at that point, it's life or death. You don't worry about going to court. You're about to be killed. You've got a few seconds. What do? You just die, or do you maybe try and do something about it? I don't know. I could forgive either in that case. So you comply and fight in court, which is why the fact he was resisting is all we need to say. Yeah, there's several things wrong with that, Ezreal. Yes, you comply and fight it in court, and that takes presence of mind. It takes discipline to do that. If you're literally already being shot for no justified reason, it is well within the spirit of American resistance against tyranny to say, whoa, fuck that. Like, if you haven't been shot at yet, yeah, you assume civility and you try to, have your day in court. But if they are literally trying to kill you, I could understand anyone at least reaching for their gun before they die. I'm not going to fault him for that. That's a momentary instinct. And besides, they had already started shooting him by that time. Again, if it was a SIG misfire and he then reached for his gun and then they shot him, that makes a lot more sense. And that may actually be what happened. If that happened, then I think we have just about reached the threshold where they were justified. It's still a tragic misunderstanding. But at that point, he had reached for a gun. They didn't know he didn't have it on him. And he had enough flexibility and arm movement to be able to shoot them potentially. So reacting immediately at that point makes sense. Before that, it's hard to justify. Yeah, again, Ezreal, where is the evidence that he was resisting? After they let go of him, he reached for his gun, seemingly. But he may have already been shot by then. Before that, was he resisting? I haven't seen any evidence that he was. Does putting your hand up when you're being pepper sprayed, does that count as resisting? Turning around and trying to block the pepper spray, does that count as, like, does he have the intent to resist? Sure. Was he actually resisting? It's not that clear. Yeah, don't be in the situation, natural selection. Yeah, fair enough. But if the situation were the other way around and it was leftist police and you felt that it was, and they were just going around killing people, like that's what he believes they were doing. He's incorrect, but that's what he believes they're doing. If they were going around doing unjustified actions and violence, and you decided to resist them, and you found yourself in that you protected someone, you thought you were protecting someone, you just body blocked so that the evil tyrants couldn't hurt them anymore. Like a lot of the things that we say about the blood of liberty, the tree of liberty requires the blood of tyrants and patriots. If what they were doing was unjustified, these officers, which it wasn't, the overall job wasn't unjustified, but all it would take is for it to be unjustified, for you to believe it was tyranny. And then suddenly your position would completely shift. Most Americans. And you would say, no, shoot them before they get the chance to shoot you. They're tyrants. And the fact that what they're doing is justified is the only distinction here, but the protesters just disagree with you. They believe it's unjustified. So the argument kind of doesn't come up. And so we have to have standards that are a bit more open to both perspectives. It is smart not to resist police, even if they're pointing guns at you. It is wise. It is the sensible and overall longest term better option for your survival. But if you genuinely believe they're tyrants, would you ever take action against police who you think are doing the wrong thing? Most of you would, and you should say you would. That's what he was doing here. Now, that doesn't make it right, obviously, but he barely did anything. I think the reason they shot him is not because he was about to reach for his gun. It's not because he had fought with ICE a week earlier. It's not because he hated them. It's because they thought he was about to shoot them, but he wasn't. Yeah, he may have intended to, but he wasn't actually about to. And so that's a tragic misunderstanding, which is what caused this. Yeah, and Natchez, I agree there are better ways. But if you thought the best way to save the West, or to save your country, whatever, was to obstruct tyrannical, violent people who happen to have a badge, maybe the badge has lost all meaning to you, it would be a similar situation. You would have to make the argument that, oh, okay, actually the police don't get maximum total deference. Sometimes they're wrong. I don't think they were in this case in their overall intent, but there could be a situation where you'd believe they were. Britwit, I think a lot of people are underthinking it. Why is he not on the ground cuffed by the time the first shot is heard? Because the police are too busy hitting him in the face to actually arrest him. I don't know why there's 7 of them. I don't know how they took so long to get his arms behind his back. Even if he was resisting, there's 7 of them. How would they not managing to do it? That's the question. Is a lot of the way ICE has been acting. Let's put it this way: they have a good record overall, but some of the footage we've seen, they don't look that professional. They've got a difficult job, and they had to stock their ranks very quickly. And they're dealing with civilians, and it's very complicated. I understand that. I'm not saying they did anything wrong necessarily, but I don't think they all have like a lot of training. I don't think they're as well trained as they could be, as well prepared for these situations as they could be. Not that I'm one to judge exactly, but it's not my job. So, were they just unclear on how to properly arrest him? Was there too many of them, too many cooks, and none of them took the responsibility of being the one to make the arrest? Were they literally out of handcuffs because they'd done too many other arrests? I don't know. There's any number of reasons why they hadn't arrested him by that time. But we can't necessarily use that as an indication that he was resisting. And even if he was, I don't see how he could have resisted 7 of them for that long. Yes, it was a rough situation, yes. Exactly. I don't see how that's relevant, Glow in the Dark. You'll notice that I'm not saying lock them up, they're evil. Like, this always happens. I make an argument that is attempting to get to the precise truth in every aspect of a case. Even if I'm wrong, then I'm treated like I'm just taking completely one side. And what I'm saying is mostly is dropped or forgotten in ambition of just attacking one entire side. I'm not taking one entire side. I have specific positions on each of the things that happened, which I believe are truthful. They were being distracted. I didn't see, there were some distractions by the car, but there were still at least 3, 4, or more than that officers on Pretty specifically. Those guys weren't distracted. It should take 1 or 2 at most, at minimum. Well, one at minimum, but 2 should be plenty to arrest someone. 4, when he's already on the ground, harder to say why they hadn't arrested him at that point. Revelin says, because you can't actually have all 7 agents wrestle with his arms at the same time, if at most 2 or 3, the rest is to deal with other body parts. Yes, which they should have been doing. 5 is enough to hold down every limb. And it's not like they didn't have enough time. They were wrestling with him or doing whatever they were doing, for a good sort of 10 to 15 seconds while he was on the floor. Freezing cold, you can't just cuff someone and leave him laying on the ground. I'm not saying they should have left him. If you arrest, you have to have a vehicle to put him in. They don't have enough cuffs or enough car space to arrest all these trunatics. That's a big part of it. Yeah, I'm sure that is. But that would explain why they hadn't done it, even if he hadn't been resisting. And the reason this was brought up originally is as evidence that he was resisting. But if there's another reason that they wouldn't have been arresting him, then we can't use it as evidence that he was resisting. So yes, you are making my argument for me. The whistles consider following. You have been doing this for hours. No wonder they're distracted. Yeah, it's a very high tension situation. I understand why mistakes were made. This whole thing, I think, was one big mistake. And let me say this as well, just to make sure you guys hopefully understand my position better. Is the world better off without this guy in it? Probably. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was justified to kill him, because don't forget, it's not just about the outcome. There's a reason that vigilanteism is disallowed. It's not because criminals being beaten by men in spandex is a bad idea. It's because they sometimes beat the wrong people. So you have to do it properly. The process matters. It's why I think the death sentence is very questionable, because the process has to be really, really right, and you have to make sure that the people doing it are always justified, because you can't take it back. I'm not against the death penalty because I think that some people being dead isn't better for the world. It is. I'm against it because the process of deciding who those people are is very risky.
And considering that corruption is rife within most higher politics these days, yeah, the death penalty is probably not a good idea.
Not many people agree with me, Cope, so I doubt they'll agree with you either. Underestimating how hard it is to get a non-compliant individual under control. Maybe, but still, like, they had plenty of time and there were plenty of them. I'm not sure that's right. He was already on the ground. Now, if we're talking about like a jacked black guy on meth, that's a very different story. I understand that. I'm not sure I'm underestimating it in this case. If they had no capacity to arrest, they would have not tried or tired. I think you mean tried. I don't think that comes into it. If they had no capacity to arrest, they might still have tried to subdue him because he'd been wrenching at the woman. Again, I don't know why he was doing that. Probably a misunderstanding again. But because of that, they were trying to at least subdue him. But if they got to the point of subduing him and then none of them happened to have any handcuffs, they were all waiting for someone else to handcuff him. Like, it's the kind of mix-up that can happen in a chaotic situation like that. I wouldn't be that surprised. Avalon, how is that relevant? If I had or hadn't, what argument would that make? I'm not saying, they should have just had perfect presence of mind and known exactly what to do, or they should have had infinite inhuman strength and instantly been able to subdue and handcuff him. They did get him on the ground very quickly. They just didn't handcuff him very quickly. And maybe they didn't have any, maybe there was other factors involved. But I find it hard to believe that they couldn't have brought his hands up behind him in that situation.
Yeah,
given how much time they had.
Yeah.
And given that the guy was beating him in the face with a pepper spray bottle, I think that force could have been put towards a more useful purpose. So again, I think it may have been a case of they weren't operating professionally when subduing him. Maybe I'm mistaken. But again, this is only a small part of the overall talk on this. Technically, when he blocked the ICE officer, technically that was obstruction of a kind, even though it's very minor. So was he already operating against the law, even in a very minor way, from that point? Yes. So should he have been arrested from that point? Arguably, yes. You got your justification there to arrest him. You don't need to make the argument that he was resisting arrest. You can say he was, but it's not that clear that he was. He may have been. My point is not that he wasn't doing anything. He was doing not much. It's not clear how much he was doing. My point was that he wasn't actually a threat to their lives, especially not when the gun was taken. Maybe when the gun was still in his back pocket. If he had then been released fully from the grip, then maybe he would have been a threat to their lives. There's indications he may have been. But then anyone at any time could be, really. Because anyone at that protest could have had a gun hidden on them, which is why what they're doing is so dangerous, why I understand how this happened, because they're so on edge, because they need to be. But they did find the gun, they did take it away, but there was a misunderstanding on whether he had a gun and whether it had been fired in anger or accidentally. We don't even know if it had been, but they certainly didn't. So I understand why it happened. It was a horrible mistake. But did this guy do anything deserving of death? I don't think so. Should the officers be prosecuted for the way they acted? Probably not.